Welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann. You can call me H.
And I'm Ryan Quintal. You can call me Q.
So last week, I famously spoke about the meal that I made that caused me such nasal distress.
Yeah.
Is the way to put that. And because I had leftover ingredients, I decided to make the same thing this week. Also today, before recording, the strangest thing happened because I always thought that it was the paprika and the cumin seed that makes my head go crazy. But I started getting just the worst runny nose, like well before I even put those ingredients in. And so I don't even know what's up anymore because, I mean, is it a psychological thing? Was my body anticipating the paprika and getting miserably allergic beforehand, or is it another ingredient? I don't even know. Is it the specific knife that I use to cut the vegetables? I don't know anymore. I'm so lost.
Whenever I'm working with an ingredient like raw chicken, I don't actually know how cautious I'm supposed to be with raw chicken. So I find myself when I'm handling it, I feel like an idiot because I'm like seasoning it, then I'm washing my hands, and where I'm taking it out of the package and I'm washing my hands, and I'm seasoning it and I'm washing my hands, and I'm putting it in the pan and I'm washing my hands. I just feel like there's no way I need to wash my hands this much. It's just chicken, right? But, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
Tell you what, how about next time I'll cut one ingredient out of the recipe and we'll just kind of see how it goes. And then for you, next time you cook with raw chicken, just don't wash your hands, and then we can kind of compare experiences.
Right. What if I fly over to your house and I prepare you a meal with all of those ingredients plus raw chicken, and we both eat it together? That's the only way we can really zoom in on all this.
I'm pretty sure there's a word for that kind of thing, but that does seem like the appropriate way for Playwright to end.
Yeah, that's and then we wake up and it all took place in the Bob Newhart show.
All right, well, let's get to some video games. So I'll be going first today. I don't have a fully formed pitch, but I have a challenge to us. So it's a little bit more open-ended, and let's see if we can turn it into anything. So one of the things that I always dislike in video games is like herding animals, like herding sheep, or all the mini games where you're trying to kind of like try to get on the outside of a group of animals to try to like get them to go where you want them to go.
It inevitably feels like AI that's no better than like one of the old Pac-Man ghosts or something, or a bunch of them.
Yeah, and I just never really enjoy that. How do we make that fun?
Oh God. How do we make that fun? I think for me, it would be the first thing we could do is start layering some mechanics onto it. So I like in Minecraft the experience of, say, taking out wheat or grass and like attracting animals to what I'm holding. So potentially there's, for the strays, there's kind of a mechanic to lure them back with some object of desire.
Okay, so kind of an alternating push and pull mechanics then.
Yeah, if we were going full sci-fi on it, I think it would be really interesting to be able to have, say, electrical fences or barriers or something that you could kind of cast out in front of you. So it's a little bit of almost a tiny mini little test your grenade throw sort of game where you're sort of always throwing up barriers in front of you, and you're able to create these barriers and therefore shape a maze and a path to corral the animals into.
I guess I should start off by kind of getting some of the things out there that I don't like, and we'll see what we can do with them. See if we can turn this around in any way. So one of the things that I don't like is often the control scheme. So you'd get this in like the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, or, other games where you are on horseback or I guess playing as an animal or something. And you're kind of, it's hard to kind of maneuver in that 3D space in a way that feels kind of predictable. Like I think the best version of this that I've played is the mini game in Donkey Kong 64, because that has kind of like a top-down view, and I feel like that makes it easier to conceptualize. But just the just the feeling of moving around in this type of space where you're always, your regular walking speed isn't quite fast enough to get to where you want to be. And then you get like a dash that sends you too far and you overshoot it, and the sheep are going in the opposite direction. They start breaking out into groups. Like, it feels very hard to position yourself. And that's one of the things that bugs me the most.
I agree. There's something about the way that those things are implemented in games that almost like highlight for you what is bad in an otherwise good game.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, did we have any of this in Breath of the Wild? Did we have any animal herding that we had to do at any point? I do know that we had some version of sort of punting sheep, I think it was, in Mario Odyssey.
In Breath of the Wild, there wasn't animal herding to my memory, but there was kind of like wrangling wild horses, which kind of has a similar, like, you got to kind of corner them, or you got to kind of like get them in an area where you can make the attack and they don't have like an escape route necessarily.
Right. It ultimately is like, I think maybe why you enjoyed it in Donkey Kong is it's a moment that kind of calls for an overhead view, because it's about managing a position around an object.
Yeah.
And like behind the back, third person cameras are generally not good at managing that exact thing.
I also think it might be kind of satisfying to have like very, very large groups and have it be kind of a low consequence for getting it wrong. Like, I always find it very satisfying whenever there's like, I don't know, 200 physics objects and you just kind of drop something in the middle and watch them all react to it. And I just think like herding around that many, animals or people or whatever it is in this scenario could have kind of like a satisfying feeling, like playing with a bowl of Jell-O or something like that.
That would be cool. Like you're trying to herd a wasp of bees or something like that.
or like putting a magnet in the middle of like a plate full of like metallic scraps or something. You ever done that where?
Yeah, and they could stand up and end, or they all like go towards a thing.
Yeah, but kind of mass controlling things. I think that's the appeal, and that's like the core of what makes like herding exercises interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why it's often so uninteresting or bad is because you, the player in a lot of these games, aren't necessarily given any crowd control, I should be very specific in this, non-tactical crowd control options. You get like a gas grenade or something, but they won't let you, very quickly throw down, like you said, maybe an invisible magnet tether that just like draws a bunch of animals closer. If you had to like go and set up almost like a minefield or something in advance, and like the whole game was about like planning out or the whole section was about, okay, they're going to go this way, I want them to go here, so I'm going to put up some fences, I'm going to put up some barriers, almost like if you did a Fortnite level of frantic building to hoard a group of animals.
You're kind of like building a mouse maze while they're running it.
Right. And so if one gets away, you kind of have the ability to very quickly build up a barrier around just that thing, isolate it, and either contain it for a period of time, or once it is contained within, say, 4 walls or something, build a tunnel to the rest of the group, knock down one of the walls, and that thing find its way back to the herd.
I see. So in a touchscreen environment, this could work really well, as if you're kind of drawing walls all the time, because that lets you react quickly, and it kind of has that same kind of innate appeal of those games that used to be popular where you could like draw a line and then somebody would like snowboard on it or something.
It's kind of what was I going to say? A Kirby's Epic Yarn or something like that?
Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. That's
Kirby
the one.
and the Rainbow Curse. There it is. Perfect. So yeah, especially the ability to have a touchscreen or a stylus and say, okay, go this way. But then also, I love that idea of I could throw something that is the equivalent of, maybe feels mechanically like throwing a grenade, but anything is sort of like warped to it. So it's almost like one of those crazy, what is that Xbox game that it has, it's just a ton of sort of silly mechanics. So you skateboard around a world, or you kind of surf power lines around Sunset Overdrive. It's kind of got a Sunset Overdrive, a sort of mechanical aesthetic to it.
Okay. I'm also trying to think of like what are interesting crowd control dynamics. I don't necessarily want to be like a god type of scenario. Like I don't want to be like non-present, because
Right.
then like you are kind of losing like the core of what makes a herding game a herding section. Maybe if you could can kind of like nudge things in a direction based on projectiles. Another thing that bothers me about herding in video games is that it's always difficult to kind of like to get things to stop. You know, if you're behind something, they're always moving away from you. And so if they're approaching an obstacle, then it's the challenge of getting around it. And then they're redirected into a direction you don't want them to go. And it always feels like you're just kind of like, it's like when you get off balance on your bike and you're just kind of like wobbling back and forth, and it's not right until like you can fully correct yourself.
Right. You don't ever feel, quote, in control of the situation. That's interesting.
I wonder if there's anything if there was a motion control component, you played a character, maybe you can switch between like 4 characters, like 4 cowboys, each on their horses, kind of on the opposite ends of a herd. And you swap between them. And then based on like how much you're moving, your motion controller is just like how scared the animals are of you. And so if you want them to divert quickly, then you move to the leftmost cowboy, and then you start moving a lot, and he makes a lot of commotion, and then the sheep all go the other way. Or if you just want them to kind of like slowly, start to angle in a different direction so you still have control, and then you move very slowly, and you try not to spook anything.
Speaking of some control ways to make this or to solve this herding problem, I would tap the well of something that Nintendo kind of mastered back in the day, Z-targeting.
Mm-hmm.
Z-targeting is almost always implemented in video games as a lock-on to enemy mechanic, but I think it would be interesting to have a sort of lock on to the central point of a group as a mechanic. And if you could kind of lock onto the center of the sheep or whatever, whatever the herding mechanic is, or pack of animals is, then you can kind of do that. What I think is legitimately fun, sort of strafe jumping around the entire herd back and forth, almost like you're doing you almost become a steering wheel at that point.
Yeah. It would have to get creative once the group starts to kind of like wander off in different directions, but I think it's possible. We've spent enough time there. Let's close that down, come up with a name.
Interesting problem.
Because we are trying to kind of like strip back some of the more cumbersome elements, this makes sense to me. Let's see if you like it. Automatic for the Sheeple, kind of like the REM album.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm for it. I was going to do, is there something Dreams of Electric Sheep or something like that? But yeah, the automatic for the Sheeple is perfect.
All right. Let's go over to what you're bringing us today.
I also have a concise pitch that is about something that I probably has been considered, but I want to talk through it with you. I would like to do a physical card-based fighting game where you have cards that are punches, kicks, maybe the variants of high and low on each of those, blocks, throws, jumps. You essentially get hands of 5 cards at a time, and you play out your cards, you then your opponent, you then your opponent, you then your opponent, and you get that same rock, paper, scissors of, throws beat blocks, but blocks beat punches, and punches beat throw, that sort of mechanic going on. But what does a card game that is like Hearthstone feel like if a round lasts more like 5 minutes than 45 minutes?
Okay, very cool. Well, we'll start the clock there and see where we take it. Yeah, so I would love for this to be like on like a drop mix board, and so you can have a little representation of what's happening on screen. But this idea of kind of turning a fighting game into like a turn-based type of mechanic is really interesting. I would really like it if like every round you were playing like 3 cards or something, and then one of them was always face down. So obviously the board can read it, but the player can only really like react to 2 of them. And so you kind of have to like card count, or you kind of have to like have some sort of an understanding of like what would be an appropriate strategy, because there would be like combos. And so you'd say, okay, with those 2 cards out there, the follow-up to this combo could be this, and that would be devastating. So I got to block for this attack, or maybe he's psyching me out and he's just getting a 3rd hit. you know?
Yeah, that's cool. When you start talking about that sort of thing, it gets me in the mindset of, wouldn't it be cool to apply almost like a fighting game character sort of system on top of this, where you are picking your fighting game character going in, and we know that that fighting game character has a certain set of combos he or she can perform. And so if you happen to get, you might want to hold on to cards in your hand, because if you're able to get, punch, punch, kick, throw that's one of your character's special combos, and playing them in a row is worth like 2x the damage or something.
Yeah, so pretty much any attack that you can land does damage to your opponent, but if you can pull off a combo and then all three, well, I guess if the final hit goes unblocked or something, because it's really easy to block the previous two because you can see them and react to them. I don't know.
Potentially, if you don't
quite figure it out.
It could be that you have to draw a blocking card.
Okay.
Or maybe throughout the course of a round, you start with a different hand, or maybe different characters start with different hands. Some are more defensive, some are more grappling, almost that sort of Mortal Kombat 11 style setup. You're saying, oh, I'm going to go into this with a mostly blocking deck because I have a feeling my opponent is a thrower. And so you kind of get to equal parts reading the opponent as you are reading the opponent's deck, which is a little bit more what a fighting game is about. I feel like in the one-on-one matches, you're paying attention. You play psychological games with your opponent just as much as you know the potential moveset of their character.
Okay. Let's see. So I want to make this really simple and really readable, really accessible, because that's one of the things I love about Drop Mix is that, you can explain the premise and people can start playing in a minute. And even if you don't really know anything about music, you can still read the cards. Like, it's very simple to understand. There's like the 3 power levels of each card, and then there's the color of each card.
Yeah.
Basically, that's all you need to know. And so, a system like that where you're not necessarily having to juggle like that much information, but it just kind of like interacts with other cards in interesting ways, or there are things you can set up to try to lead to interesting effects. I want to keep the strategies kind of more like metagame strategies rather than like relying on very complicated card configurations like Hearthstone would have.
Right, exactly. Like, I totally agree. You don't want someone, although talk to anybody who sells microtransactions, maybe you do. You don't want like an endlessly crazy deck. Like, throughout a fighting game match, a lot of the same moves are being thrown 10, 20 times, but it's happening at such a pace that, the whole thing is over within 10 minutes. And I feel like one of the barriers I have with playing some, I used to play Magic the Gathering. I don't anymore. I don't even play Hearthstone. Even though I don't dislike card games, they just often take a time commitment and a level of sort of rote, I guess, knowledge about what the potential move set is, or the potential set of characters and classes and abilities are, that make it too hard to do this with. So like the same way that a quote button masher could beginners luck their way through a fighting game match in a fighting game, I'm trying to figure out how to like get that experience into a card game that maybe feels a little bit more like war than Hearthstone.
Maybe every attack is both offensive and defensive, where it can defend against an attack of the same type, but it's vulnerable because, I feel like if you have limited cards that you're playing in each hand, then having like purely defensive cards might serve as a disadvantage. So maybe it's broken up different colors, like, red for punch, yellow for kick, blue for grapple. And then if you play the same color card as somebody else in the same sequence of the 3 that you're playing in each round, then it cancels the other one out. And maybe there's even like power levels to each card. And so a 3 power punch can, still damage them if they've thrown a 1 power punch. But if it's the other way around, then you are taking damage. And knowing when to play the powerful cards, the rarer ones that don't come up in the shuffle that often, or knowing when to just kind of like take a hit or I don't know if there's other defensive options, kind of like the white cards and drop mix that kind of give you like bonus options that aren't provided by the rest of the cards.
Yeah, it would even be interesting to me to see, like, obviously these are first guess rules, but what if you had a deck that was something like 60 cards? Every, quote, round or so, at least 15 cards are going to be played. Like, that sort of pace of like me go, you go, me go, you go, me go, you go should feel like it's happening at the pace of a fight and less so the pace of a plotting strategy game where you're kind of looking at mana. But I love this concept of the deck has a punch with the power of 3, power of 2, and power of 1, all as potential like punch options within a deck. And you know that because a character could have a potential pool of stamina or something, and that can be imagined. It doesn't actually have to be a mechanic, but like you can only throw so many super powerful punches in a fight before you're too tired to do so. So you're throwing your deck only has like 2 level 3 punches in it.
So not to push against the idea, but I'm just kind of curious. What is the what is the appeal of it going very quickly as opposed to going slow? Because that feels more kind of analogous to the gameplay experience of a video game. And if we're translating this into like a card game, like what are we gaining from doing that?
Maybe war is a bad reference here, but I think to this day, I still really enjoy playing a game of Uno.
Yeah.
And I think something that can be read and understood and reacted to at the speed of a game of Uno, probably not a 6-player game of Uno, maybe more like a 3-player game of Uno, feels like the correct cadence for this sort of thing. So, like, if you do have strong color cards that are, yellow is punch, blue is block, that sort of thing, then seeing a card with a punch or, fist or foot icon, you immediately know what it is, and oh, I've got a block card, I'm going to block it. Now, if you play a block, you get a free second card that you can play, so I'm going to block it, then I'm going to kick.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I like that playing a block kind of rewards you with something, almost like stealing another player's card in certain games. So there are advantages to playing defensively other than just kind of like putting off defeat, which is what it feels like sometimes when defensive measures aren't really balanced in interesting ways.
Yeah, totally.
So I just got done, I guess, a couple weeks ago playing Sekiro, and that is a game that has very interesting defensive options because all of your defenses can be really turned against your enemies. And, we're kind of running out of time, so I don't necessarily want to open a whole other can of worms, but I think that there are interesting ways to make defense feel more active and more vital than just kind of like throwing your hands over your head and absorbing only like 1/10 of the possible damage, like it is in a lot of fighting games.
Yeah, I think that if the whole thing manages to capture the feeling of going toe to toe, I hit you, you hit me, with the 2 caveats of being able to say break off combos and interrupt said combos and do combos of your own, then it will have successfully captured the feeling of a fighting game, especially with the graphical and fictional wrapper, more than maybe some mainstream card games are doing. Listeners, if you know of this, please tell us. And if it doesn't exist, I'm a designer. We will kickstart this thing. I will spend the next 20 episodes of this show tossing out ideas for this.
So please let it exist.
That's right.
All right. Well, that's all the time that we have. Let's come up with a name for it. And if this is something that you're kickstarting, we better be happy with what name we come up with here.
I know, no kidding. I feel like anything that has like battle in it is so already in the card vernacular.
There's Mortal Card Bat, which isn't great.
No, we can't kickstart with that. We'll get sued. Mortal Card Bat is pretty good though. This is a real term, right? Fight card.
Fight card? What does that mean?
I think a fight card is like what you say you say who's on the fight card, and it's like this person and this person versus this person and this person. So it is literally like a very quick summary of the two opponents that are going up against each other.
Yeah, sure.
My other suggestion was going to be something like fight deck or something like that, but neither's great.
Oh man, because you could like deck somebody in real life. That's a fighting term, so I feel like there's something there.
Fight deck also sounds a little bit like flight deck, which sounds like a fighting game on an aircraft carrier. Sounds like a different pitch from us. Fight deck. Are we like fight deck better?
Or you could do like deck your friends.
Get decked. Oh, there's something called fight deck, which is a modern Magic the Gathering deck. It seems like it's a term. I'm gonna say fight deck.
Okay.
And we'll see if it's anything.
Sounds good. Kind of puts me in the mind of those little tech deck skateboards I used to play with back when
you were kicking ollies with your fingers.
Yeah, back when my fingers were cooler than I was.
Radical.
Let's go to the community now and see what all of you have to say. And this comes from Matthew A. Taylor, who says, long-time listener, third time writing in, hopefully third time getting through also. I believe that's true. I love your show. It's inspired me and my friends to have these conversations ourselves. That's very cool. If there's these conversations happening, just go ahead and write everything in. We'd love to.
Yeah, please document these.
More of these. Yeah, right. When listening to episode 99's community pitch, Feud Truck, I was hoping you two would have gotten to a place I was imagining with the game, but it never happened. Uh-oh. That's the way it goes sometimes.
We've let them down.
So let me pitch the listeners something very similar, but with a slight twist. I like this. We're revisiting old ground and kind of putting it back on the table with a different twist. Let's see what different direction it goes in. Matthew says, I want to see a Crazy Taxi styled game, but instead of cabs, you are food trucks. Openish world, variety of spots to stop and dish food out. Green circled spots are easy and quick. Red circled spots are going to take longer. And each character will have their own unique food truck with special abilities. I'm already kind of dreading coming up with another name because I feel like Food Truck.
Food Truck was so good.
All right. Well, we're opening it back up and starting the clock there.
So I'm going to need some guidance from you because I don't have any mental context or model for Crazy Taxi. I know it's a beloved game franchise, but I've never myself played a Crazy Taxi.
Oh, it feels like the kind of thing you'd be into. Yes. Well, Crazy Taxi, you play as a taxi driver in like some sort of a version of San Francisco or something like that. Basically, you drive around the city and there's certain customers, certain pedestrians that indicate that they're willing to pay you a certain amount of money. And the entire time you have like a clock that's counting down, and there are ways to earn some extra time for the timer, but it's always kind of like marching towards zero. And so basically you have 5 minutes or something to make as much money as possible by picking up the customers. And they have little visual indicators of how much money they're willing to pay you, which usually means that, if it's a red customer, they're going to pay a lot. And so it either means that they're going a long way and it's going to take more of your precious time, or it's very demanding with the time that you have to deliver them, because if they take too long, they have their own individual timers. They'll just hop out of the car and they'll be like, I'll just walk from here.
Got it. Okay. So, and I was watching YouTube as you kind of described this to me.
And you should listen to some of The Offspring in the background just to kind of put you in the mind for it as well.
Yeah, I don't have audio going, but I was literally watching it as you described it. And so, okay, so in Matthew's pitch, there are spots to stop and dish out food, but it takes more time. So you're essentially, how long you stop is the equivalent of identifying how much a passenger is willing to pay or how far away a stop is.
Well, I think so. The interesting thing about a food truck as opposed to a taxi is that it serves multiple people at once.
Right.
And so kind of like when we were talking about food truck, one of the more interesting aspects, I think, was the kind of crowd management, which is since we were kind of like pitching that one as like a Twisted Metal type of game, this one's a very different style, but has kind of a similar conceit to try to kind of like think about crowd management. And so I think you're more kind of like there are kind of spots that are kind of better for selling because there's more people at those locations, and maybe there's rich people working in the buildings next door or something. Maybe the crowds move throughout the day, as, early in the day, you're going to catch a lot of business people at their jobs, and later in the day, maybe a lot of people hit the beach or something.
It would be interesting to have some kind of mechanic here where, Matthew, you're pulling up to one of these spots and there's like kind of a food, like time to profit graph, little calculation that you're essentially doing of how long or how many people you're serving and how much money you're making. And that isn't necessarily a 1-for-1, right? It sort of tops out and slows down. You're like, okay, well, we've kind of maxed out the money-making potential of a particular spot, and now it's time to move on to another spot.
What if the type of food that you're selling is determined by, like, you can park pretty much anywhere and get some customers. Of course, you have to kind of think about crowd management, but you also have to refill your food, which is something that we kind of touched on last time. But maybe you have just basically like a big vacuum or a big grinder on the front of your car, and you just have to, like, if you need hamburgers, you got to drive through like a cow patch. And if you need like salads, you need to drive through like any sort of vegetation, and it just like sucks it all into the car and chops it up and turns it into the food. And so you're incentivized to be moving around just to pick up different types of food. And the more types of food that you have to sell, the wider group of customers you have, or the more you can charge or something like that. And, people have different requests for food. And so having a variety is going to be beneficial.
Oh, okay. So that way you could actually tie like your fuel, quote unquote, of multiple ingredients together. Mm-hmm. Let's just say generically, what you need to make a hamburger or one of these sandwiches is protein and vegetables, right?
Yeah.
So now you could be driving through with your car on just like through somebody's garden, right? And that's how you like pick up vegetable resources. Maybe you drive and you hit some roadkill, and that's how you can get some protein along with cows and like the stuff that you're talking about.
If you're on the beach, then you can just drive through like a flock of seagulls, and then maybe try to like swerve into like a palm tree or something like that, and it just sucks it all in.
What would be amazing about this is this would kind of fulfill a desire that I've been having, which is let me hit those sheep in Forza Horizon, please.
Yeah, they're very intelligent sheep.
Yeah, I know. And they're they predict which way I'm headed just immediately. So I love the idea of, God, can you imagine a crazy taxi that had like that level of like quality and fidelity to the whole thing?
Is that one of the big challenge that I wanted to avoid here is that I didn't want to use the same solution that we had last time, is that if you have a food truck and we're talking about crowd management, other than the crowds around you being satisfied, we had this idea last time that if you park somewhere, it attracts more people to that spot because they see that a food truck is open. Kind of like if you hear the bells of an ice cream truck, people go running. And so you'd think that it's kind of self-perpetuating at that point, that if you just sit there and plant yourself, then you can just like make money because that spot becomes more valuable. And we mitigated that last time by having a car combat type of system where the other cars would be watching out for you. And if you are planted and selling, then you're leaving yourself vulnerable to being attacked. And like, that's an interesting perspective, but I didn't want to just rehash the same thing, obviously. So if we can give them a reason to move around, then that's going to be, that's going to solve this problem.
This is kind of what I was trying to address with that graph problem. So this is a hot tip for anybody that loves microwave popcorn. Generally, the way to tell if you're terrible and you burn popcorn a lot, this is a pro tip here. If it's starting to take more than 1 to 2 seconds between every single kernel pop, your popcorn is done and it needs to come out of the microwave. I feel like there would have to be some like cadence of people so that like the crowd is big at first, but you kind of deplete the crowd in the same way that you have like, the people per second is starting to go down. then, better to just leave the remaining people hungry and move on to the next spot as soon as you can. And along with that, I would really love, because it seems to me like as I'm watching this Crazy Taxi long play, if you can believe that, it's Crazy Taxi long play, it seems like some of the most like unaction filled moments are the moments where somebody is driving around and it's taking a little bit longer for them to find a fare than maybe they suspected it might. Having a mini map with, say, little icons on it that say, hey, people uptown want salads right now and people over here want burgers right now. And so you can, as you're collecting those ingredients, go, okay, well, I've got the ingredients to serve people burgers. I'm going to go serve this crowd right here. And so you're also trying to min-max what locations you're stopping at based on the onboard ingredients you have.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. Keeping people mobile, and maybe you don't even have to stop. Maybe it's just driving through the crowd. You can just kind of toss them food at full speed. So people really never need to. It could be like a speed type of thing where it's like, you don't want to slow down. You just want to keep going.
Yeah, and I think in terms of like special abilities, you're open to vehicles like maybe one has like leaf mulcher or something on the front and it can gather more salad ingredients faster out of like vegetable patches and that sort of thing. And you have like you said, the meat grinder is a cool one. And maybe there's even just one that like doesn't particularly gather any fast, but it's got more windows for you to throw food out of.
Maybe we take like a paperboy element and you actually have to like aim the food that you're throwing. And so maybe that's like the right stick. It turns it into like a twin stick shooter in a way. And so as you're driving past, like you can slow down and get more precise aim. Or if you're really good, then you can just like kind of fly as you go by.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. And then you can kind of like toss. And that way, if the amount of things that you're able to quote shoot are equivalent to the onboard ammo you have based on the ingredients you collected, you can way overstock on particular ingredients and go, okay, I'm just going to get to this crowd and like unleash hamburgers onto the masses.
Yeah. So again, we are out of time and we have to come up with a new name.
I feel like we have an opportunity to do an Uber or Lyft joke out of this one.
Chuber's
pretty... Wow, God, that was quick.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it really makes sense unless you're already in the mind of
food burr. Yeah, maybe not.
Meals on wheels is another term that's used.
Yes, I like where that's going. Is this anything licensed to serve?
Because it's kind of like a driver's license. I think it more kind of puts me in the mind of like James Bond License to Kill.
Right.
Fast food, I guess, also makes sense.
Oh, there's the fast and the foodrious.
Oh, let's see.
That's not really good.
There has to be something.
It is inspired by Crazy Taxi, so maybe there's just something that's directly Crunchy Taxi or something like that.
Cuisine U.S.A.
Oh, Cuisine U.S.A. is pretty good.
I feel like that's a reference for like older gamers who remember Cruisine U.S.A. It's a bit of an obscure one at this point.
Matthew didn't supply us with one, Matthew, even though you told us you've been thinking about this. Horrible. I like Cuisine USA. I really do.
All right. Well, that was Matthew A. Taylor with Cuisine USA. It leaves us open to sequels as well. Cuisine San Francisco and Cuisine 2049, I think. No, those are San Francisco Rush. Now I'm mixing up all of my like stand-up arcade racing games from pizza restaurants. It's been a while. Yeah, Cuisine the World. That one definitely has a level on Mars, I believe. If you would like to supply us with a pitch of your own, whether it is based on a previous idea that we've done before, we're always happy to take a second pass at things. Or if you have just a completely original and weird idea that you've been meaning to get out there, if there's things you've been discussing with your friends, then please do write in. That is playwrightcast@gmail.com. You can go to our website, playwrightcast.com/pitch, or you can tweet us at playwrightcast.
Hey, H, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What does a nosy pepper do?
Nosy pepper.
Yes.
Let's see. I feel like are we talking chili peppers or like the pepper condiment?
Yeah, we're talking, we'll say a chili pepper. Sure. What does a nosy chili pepper do?
Okay. It tries to find all of your spicy secrets.
Oh, very, very close. It gets jalapeno business.
Oh, that's not bad. I like that. Okay.
A special thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song, Hello World, off the album Blue Noise. It's very good, and go give it a listen. And while you're in a music listening mood, why don't you check out episode 200? That is probably, a few days old, a week old by the time you're hearing this, but episode 200 of Sound of Play, you, Mr. H here, and Leon tear it up, as well as a bunch of people from Kane and Rince. And I found out Jacob and I both share affections for the soundtrack of Florence, which is very nice through that episode. And what else? Is there anything else? Oh, yes, there's... I'm just in Plug City over here. Also, thank you to the Kane and Rince Network. We already talked about Sound of Play, but there's Kane and Rince, a video game review podcast. And, of course, the Sausage Factory, with great interviews with game developers. So go check out the other stuff on the network.
All right, and to take us out of the show today, I'm going to deliver a miniature pitch. What I want is a game where you play as a skeleton doing daily tasks, and you have to keep yourself from falling apart.
Hey, H. What's a dessert's favorite actor?
Oh, boy. All right. A dessert's favorite actor would be...
I feel like you're going to get it. I feel like you're going to get it.
I'm pretty good at reverse engineering these types of jokes, but I say that. And then, let's see. Cake Gyllenhaal?
That is basically the joke, so we can give you that, but the answer written here is Robert Brownie Jr.
It's not bad.
All right, that's it. Bye.